Hello and welcome to Fireside Fairytales. My name is Rory and you're watching Varietal Literature's YouTube channel. And what Varietal Literature is it's a group of writers from Vancouver who just enjoy narrative. And what we do here on Tuesday nights at 6:30 is we read old classic folk and fairy tales. What we're reading tonight is a few stories. Well, actually, it might just be the one. We'll see how the timing works out. It's not short. It's called The Three Princesses in the Blue Mountain, which is a very generic fairy tale name, but actually it is a very cool story. It's got a pretty good adventure heart to it, and it's got the kind of stuff that I'm a sucker for. And the quote in the icon about the way is dark, and you have to go through both fire and water, that kind of like high drama, low voice mysteriousness, it sort of permeates throughout it, and I really enjoy it for that reason. If we have time, we will read a few more stories of our Miko the Fox, our installments, which are little mini adventures that are part of a multi-segment epic that we've been reading at the tail end of episodes for the last month and a half. And beyond that, if you only want to hear certain things, like let's say you only want to hear Three Princesses in the Blue Mountain, down in the description below, if you are not watching this live, there will be timestamps. You can click on them. They will jump you ahead to whatever story it is you are most interested in listening to. And beyond that, if you do enjoy it, please remember to like. It really helps us when we're a real small time like this. Obviously, telling old folk tales, well, I do think it is important. It's not a great thing for the algorithm. I mean, I like video games and stuff, don't get me wrong, but obviously that would be the thing to do for the algorithm. So anything you can do to help me out with the algorithm, I'll greatly appreciate. GS is in the chat. There is a live chat in between stories, and sometimes even during the stories, I'll check out chat and record or respond and whatever else. So feel free to join in the live chat if you wish. Beyond that, let me tell my tale. Tonight's tale is called The Three Princesses in the Blue Mountain. It's not really a mountain, though. It's more like a mound. It is from a book called East of the Sun, West of the Moon, Old Tales from the North, which is a collection of folk tales, largely from Finland and Norway. I think it might actually almost always be Norway, and a little bit Sweden. And you can get it on Project Gutenberg if you wish, for free. There was once upon a time a king and a queen who had no children. They took it to heart. They took it so much to heart that they hardly ever had a happy moment. One day the king stood in the portico and looked out over the big meadows and all that was his. But he felt he could have no enjoyment out of it. Sorry. There we are. Since he did not know what would become of it after his time, as he stood there pondering, an old beggar woman came up and asked him for a trifle in heaven's name. She greeted him and curtsied and asked what ailed the king, since he looked so sad. "You can't do anything to help me, my good woman," said the king. "It's no use telling you." "I'm not so sure about that," said the beggar woman. "Very little is wanted when luck is in the way. The king is thinking that he has no heir to his crown and kingdom, and he need not mourn on that account," she said. "The queen shall have 3 daughters, but great care must be taken that they do not come out under the open heavens before they are all 15 years old. Otherwise a snowdrift will come and carry them away." Well, when the time came, the queen had a beautiful baby girl. The year after, she had another, and the third year, she also had a girl. The king and queen were glad beyond all measure, but although the king was very happy, he did not forget to set a watch at the palace doors so that the princesses should not get out. As they grew up, they became both fair and beautiful, and all went well with them in every way. Their only sorrow was that they were not allowed to go out and play like other children, for they begged and prayed that their parents, and they besought the sentinel, the person who stood by their door, but it was of no avail. Go out they must not before they were 15 years old, all of them. So one day, not long before the 15th birthday of the youngest princess, the king and the queen were out driving, and the princesses were standing at the window, looking out the window, and the sun was shining, and everything looked so green and beautiful that they felt that they must go out, happen what might. So they begged and entreated and urged the sentinel, all three of them, that he should let them down into the garden. He could see for himself how warm and pleasant it was. No snowy weather could come on such a day. Well, he didn't think it looked like it either. And if they must go, they'd better go. The soldier said, but it must be only for a minute, and he himself would go with them to look after them. When they got down into the garden, they ran up and down and filled their laps with flowers and green leaves and the prettiest they could find. At last, they could manage no more, but as they were going indoors, they caught sight of a large rose at the other end of the garden. It was many times prettier than any they had gathered, so they must have that also. But just as they bent down to take the rose, a big, dense snowdrift came and carried them away. And there is wonderful art of them picking that rose and blowing away. There was great mourning over the whole country, and I have to assume the sentinel. The king made known from all the churches that anyone who could save the princesses should have half the kingdom and his golden crown, whichever princess he liked to choose. You can well understand there were plenty of them who wanted to gain half the kingdom and a princess into the bargain. So there were people of both high and low degree who set out for all parts of the country, but there was no one who could find the princesses or even get any tidings of them. When all the grand and rich people in the country had had their turn, a captain and a lieutenant came to the palace and wanted to try their luck. The king fitted them with both silver and gold and wished them success on their journey. Then after came a soldier, separate from them, who lived with his mother in a little cottage some way from the palace. He had dreamt one night that he also was trying to find the princesses. When the morning came, he still remembered what he had dreamt, and he told his mother about it. Some witchery must have gotten a hold of you, said the woman, but you must dream the same thing 3 nights running. Else there is nothing to it. And the next 2 nights the same thing happened, and he had the same dream, and he felt he must go. So he washed himself and put on his uniform, and he went into the kitchen at the palace. It was the day after the captain and the lieutenant had set out. You'd better go home again, said the king. The princesses are beyond your reach, I should say. And besides, I spent so much money on outfits that I have nothing left today. You had better come back another time. If I go, I must go today, said the soldier. Money I do not want. I only need a drop in my flask and some food in my wallet, he said, but it must be a good wallet full. As much heat and bacon as I can carry. Yes, that he might have if that was all he wanted. So he set off. He'd not gone many miles before he overtook the captain and the lieutenant. "Where are you going?" asked the captain when he saw the man in uniform. "I'm going to try and if I can find the princesses," answered the soldier. "So are we," said the captain. "Since your errand is the same, you may keep company with us, for if we don't find them, you are not likely to find them either, my lad," said he. And when they'd gone a while, the soldier left the high road and took a path into the forest. "Where are you going?" said the captain. "It's best to follow the high road." "That may be," said the soldier, "but this is my way." He kept to the path, and when the others saw this, they turned round and followed him. Away they went further and further, far across big moors and along narrow valleys. And at last it became lighter. And when they got out of the forest altogether, they came to a long bridge which they had to cross. There was no other way. But on that bridge stood a bear, and it was on guard. He rose on his hind legs and came towards them as if he wanted to eat them, teeth bared, foaming at the mouth, claws digging at the creaking bridge. "What shall we do now?" said the captain. "They say the bear is fond of meat," said the soldier, and then he threw a 4-quarter to him from his wallet full that the king had given him. And so they got past. When they reached the other end of the bridge, they saw a lion, which came roaring toward them with open jaws, as if he was ready to swallow them whole. "I think we'd better turn right about. We shall never be able to get past him alive," said the captain. "Oh, I don't think he's so very dangerous," said the soldier. "I've heard that lions are very fond of bacon, and I have half a pig in my wallet." Then he threw a ham to the lion, who began eating and gnawing, most importantly, not looking at them. And they got past him also. In the evening they came to a fine big house. Each room was more gorgeous than the other. All was glitter and splendor wherever they looked, but that did not satisfy their hunger. The captain and the lieutenant went around rattling their money and wanted to buy some food. But they saw no people, nor could they find a crumb of anything in the house. So the soldier offered them some food from his wallet, which they were not too proud to accept. Nor did they want any pressing. They helped themselves of what he had as if they had never tasted food before. The next day the captain said they have to go out shooting to try and get something to live upon. Close to the house was a large forest where there were plenty of hares and birds. The lieutenant was to remain at home and cook the remainder of the food in the soldier's wallet. In the meantime, the captain and the soldier shot so much game that they were hardly able to carry it home. But when they came to the door, they found the lieutenant in such a terrible plight that he was scarcely able to open the door to them. "What's the matter with you?" said the captain. The lieutenant then told them that as soon as they were gone, a tiny little man with a long beard, who went on crutches, came in and asked so plaintively for a penny. But no sooner had he got it than he let it fall to the floor. And for all he raked and scraped with his crutch, he was not able to get a hold of it, so stiff and stark the little old man with the long beard was. "I pitied the old body, and so I bent down to pick up the penny. Then he was neither stiff nor stark any longer. He began to belabor me with his crutches till very soon I was unable to move a limb." "You ought to be ashamed of yourself, you, one of the king's officers, to let an old cripple give you a thrashing, and then tell people of it into the bargain," said the captain. "Pshaw! Tomorrow I'll stop at home, and then you'll hear another story." The next day the lieutenant and the soldier went out shooting, and the captain remained at home to do the cooking and look after the house. But if he fared no worse, he certainly fared no better than the lieutenant. In a little while the old man came in and again asked for a penny. He let it fall as soon as he got it. Gone it was, and could not be found. So he asked the captain to help him find it. And the captain, without giving a thought, bent down to look for it, but no sooner was he on his knees than the cripple, was clearly not crippled, began belaboring him as he had the lieutenant with his crutches, and every time the captain tried to rise, he got a blow that sent him reeling back. When the others came home in the evening, he still lay on the same spot, neither able to see nor speak. The third day, the soldier was to remain home, for the lieutenant and captain were perhaps a little scared. The captain said he must take care of himself, for the old fellow will soon put an end to you, lad, said he. Oh, there can't be much life in one if such an old crook can take it, said the soldier. They were no sooner outside the door than the old man came in and asked for a penny again. Money I've never owned, said the soldier, but food I'll give you. As soon as it is ready, said he. But if we are to get it cooked, you must go out and cut the wood. That I can't, said the old man. If you can't, you must learn, said the soldier. I will soon show you. Come along with me down to the woodshed. There he dragged out a heavy log and cut a cleft in it, drove a wedge until the cleft was deepened. Now you must lie down, look right along the cleft. Soon you'll learn how to cut the wood, said the soldier. In the meantime, I'll show you how to use the axe. The old man was not sufficiently cunning for the soldier, and did as he was told. He lay down and looked steadily along the log. When the soldier saw the old man's beard had got well into the cleft, he struck out the wedge, and the cleft closed, and the old man was caught by the beard, struggling and getting away. The soldier began to beat him with the axe handle, and then swung the axe round his head and vowed he would split his skull if he did not tell him there and then where the princesses were. Spare my life, and I'll tell you, said the old man. To the east of the house there's a big mound. On top of the mound you must dig into a square piece of turf, and then you will find a big stone slab. Under there is a deep hole through which you must let yourself down. You'll then come to another world where you'll find the princesses. But the way is long and dark, and it goes both through fire and water. When the soldier got to know this, he decided to release the old man, who was not long in making off into the forest. So when the captain and lieutenant came home, they were surprised to find the soldier alive. He told them what had happened from first to last, including where the princesses were and how they should find them. They became as pleased as if they had already found them. And when they had some food, they took with them a basket and as much rope as they could find, and all three set off to the mound. There they first dug out the turf, as the old man had told them, and underneath they found a big stone slab, which it took all their strength to turn over. When they began to measure how deep it was, they joined on ropes both 2 and 3 times, but they were no nearer the bottom the last time than the first. And at last they had to join all the ropes they had, both the coarse and fine, and when they found it reach the bottom, The captain was, of course, the first who wanted to descend. But, when I tug on the rope, you must make haste and drag me up again, he said, for he found the way both dark and unpleasant. Oh, I just realized that for some reason this is not playing. I don't know why that happened. Dark and unpleasant. But he thought he would go on as long as it became no worse. But all at once he felt cold water cold as ice spouting up about his ears, and he became frightened to death, and he began tugging at the rope. The lieutenant was the next to try, but it fared no better with him. No sooner had he gone through the flood of water than he saw a blazing fire yawning before him, which so frightened him that he also tugged at that rope till they pulled him back up through the water and out, which meant the soldier got into the bucket, and down he went through fire and through the water, right on till he came to the bottom, where it was so pitch dark that he could not see his hand before him. He dared not let go of the basket, but went round in a circle, feeling and fumbling about, till at last he discovered a gleam of light, far, far away like the dawn of day, and he went on in that direction. When he'd gone a bit, it began to grow light all around him, and before long he saw a golden sun rising in the sky, and everything around him became as bright and as beautiful as if in a fairy world. First he came to some cattle, which were so fat their hides glistened a long way off. And when he got past them, he came to a fine, big palace. He walked through many rooms without meeting anybody, and at last he heard the hum of a spinning wheel. And when he entered the room, he found the eldest princess sitting there spinning copper yarn, like the metal. The room, and everything in it, in fact, was brightly polished copper. Oh dear, what are Christian people doing here?" said the princess. "Heaven preserve you, what do you want?" Now this next section, if you were watching last week, has a very similar structure for a brief section here to the story last week, but then it deviates again. "I want to set you free and get you out of the mountain," said the soldier. "Pray do not stand. If the troll comes, he will put an end to you at once. He has 3 heads," said she. "I don't care if he has 4, said the soldier. "I am here, and here I shall remain." "If you will be so headstrong, I must see if I can help you," said the princess. She then told him to creep behind the big brewing vat which stood in the front hall. Meanwhile, she would receive the troll and scratch his heads till he went to sleep. "And when I go out and call the hens, you must make haste and come in," she said. "But you must first try, if you can, swing the sword which is lying on the table." So he tried. No, it was too heavy. He could not even move it. He had then to take a strengthening draught from the horn which hung behind the door. After that, he was able to stir it, so he took another draught. Then he could lift it. At last he took a right big draught, and he could swing the sword as easily as anything, despite it being as heavy as him, maybe twice as long. All at once the troll came home, and he walked so heavily that the palace shook. "I smell Christian flesh and blood in my house," said he. "Yes," said the princess, "a raven flew past here just now, and in his beak he had a human bone, which he dropped down the chimney. I threw it out the window and swept and cleaned up after, but I suppose it still smells." "So it does," said the troll. "But come lie down, I'll scratch your head," said the princess. "The smell will be gone by the time you awake." That's a very pretty picture. The troll was quite willing, but before long he fell asleep and began sleeping. When she saw he was sleeping soundly, she placed some stools and cushions under his heads, and then went to call the hens. The soldier then stole into the room with the sword, and with one blow he cut all 3 of the troll's heads off. The princess was as pleased as a fiddler, and went with the soldier to her sisters so that he could set them free. First of all, they went across a courtyard, and then through many long rooms, till they came to a big door. Pardon me, just need a drink of water. "Here you must enter. Here she is," said the princess. When he opened the door, he found himself in a large hall, echoing with every step, where everything was pure silver. And there, the other end, sat the second sister at a silver spinning wheel. Oh dear, she said. "What do you want here?" "I want to set you free from the troll," said the soldier. "Pray do not stay, but go," said the princess. "If he finds you here, he will take your life on the spot." "That'll be awkward. That is, if I don't take his first," said the soldier. "Well, since you will stay," she said, "you will have to creep behind the big brewing vat in the front hall. But you must make haste and come as soon as you hear me calling the hens." First of all, he had to try if he was able to swing the troll's sword, of course, which lay across the table. This one was larger and heavier than the first one, so much so that he couldn't even move it, even with his added strength. So he had to again take 3 draughts from the horn. And then he could lift it. But lift it wasn't good enough. So then he'd taken 3 more so he could handle it as if it were a rolling pin. So taking this massive sword upon his shoulder, he went and he hid behind the brewing vat. Shortly afterwards, he heard a heavy rumbling sound that was quite terrible, and directly after, a troll with 6 heads came in. He said as soon as he got his noses inside the door. "I smell Christian blood and bone in my house." "Yes, sir. Just think. A raven came flying past here with a thigh bone, which he dropped down the chimney," said the princess. "I threw it out, but the raven brought it back again. At last I got rid of it and made haste to clean the room, but I suppose the smell is not quite gone," she said. "No, I can smell it well," said the troll. But he was tired and put his heads in the princess's lap, and she went on scratching them till they all fell a-snoring. Then she called the hens. The soldier came, and with that big blade and the strength of his draft, made a swipe that cut all 6 heads off as if they were set on cabbage stalks. She was no less glad than her elder sister, as you may imagine, and danced and sang, but in the midst of their joy they remembered their younger sister. They went with the soldier across a large courtyard, and after walking through many, many rooms, he came to the Hall of Gold, where the 3rd sister was. And it was large and grand as any of them. So with each echoing step, he walked across until the youngest came into focus, sitting upon a gold spinning wheel and spinning gold yarn. And the room from ceiling to floor glistened and glittered so much that it hurt your eyes. You could barely make anything out. It was just light of golden rays about you.
Heaven preserve both you and me. What do you want here? Said the princess. Go, else the troll will kill us both.
Just as well two as one, answered the soldier. The princess cried and wept, but it was all of no use. He must and would remain, since there was no help for it. He would have to try, if he could, to use the troll's sword on the table in the front hall. But he was only able to just move it. It was still larger and heavier than the other two swords. Indeed, that's quite large, for the other two couldn't even leave the room. He then had taken the horn down from the wall and taken 3 draughts from it, but he was only able this time to just stir the sword. And when he had taken 3 more draughts, well, he could lift it, but he could hardly wield it. And so he had taken another 3, 9 draughts in total of the strengthening horn. And he swung it then as easily as if it had been a feather. There he is with his big sword in the Hall of Gold. The princess then settled with the soldier to do the same as her sisters had done. As soon as the troll was well asleep, she would call the hens, and he must then make haste and come in and put an end to the troll. All of a sudden they heard such a thundering, rumbling noise, as if the walls and the roofs were tumbling in. I smell Christian blood and bone in my house, said the troll, sniffing with his 9 noses.
Yes, you never saw the like. Just now a raven flew past here and dropped a human bone down the chimney. I threw it out, but then the raven brought it back, and this went on, back and forth, for some time,
said the princess. But she got it buried at last, and she said, and she had both swept and cleaned the place, but she supposed it still smelt. Yes, I can smell it well, said the troll.
Come here, and lie down in my lap, and I will scratch your heads, said the princess. The smell will be all gone when you awake.
He did so, and when he was snoring at his best, she put stools and cushions under the heads so that she could sneak away and call the hens. But then the soldier came in his stockinged feet, and wielding that large sword, and the many draughts of strength required to wield it, he struck at the troll so that 8 of the heads fell off in one blow. But that sword was just a bit too short and didn't reach far enough, and so the 9th head woke up with a start and began to roar, I smell a Christian! Yes, here he is, answered the soldier, before twirling it about his back and yielding it back up, crushing down on his head before the troll could get up and seize hold of him, causing the last head to roll along the floor. Well, you can well imagine how glad the princesses became now that they had no longer to sit and scratch the trolls' heads. That's a lot of heads to scratch. They did not know how they could do enough for him who had saved them. The youngest princess took off her gold ring and knotted it in his hair. They then took with them as much gold and silver as they thought they could carry and set off on their way home. And there they are, traveling back in that weird underground space together. As soon as they tugged at the rope, the captain and the lieutenant pulled up the princesses, one after another after another. But when they were safely up, the soldier had a thought. It was foolish of him not to have gone up before the princesses. for he had not very much belief in his comrades. He thought he would first try them, so he put a heavy lump of gold in the basket and got out of the way. And when the basket was halfway up, well, wasn't he right? They cut the rope. The lump of gold fell to the bottom with such a crash that pieces flew about his ears. "Now we are rid of him," they said, and threatened the princesses with their life if they did not say that it was they who had saved them from the trolls. They were forced to agree to this, much against their will, and especially the youngest princess, but life was precious, and the two who were strongest had their way. When the captain and lieutenant got home with the princesses, you may be sure there were great rejoicings at the palace. The king was so glad he didn't know which leg to stand on, bouncing back and forth on them. He brought out his best wine from his cupboard and wished the two officers welcome. If they'd never been honored before, they were honored now in full measure and no mistake. They walked and strutted about the whole day as if they were the cocks of the walk, since they were now going to have a king for a father-in-law. For it was understood they should each have whichever of the princesses they liked, and half the kingdom between them. Well, they both wanted the youngest princesses, but for all they prayed and threatened her, it was of no use. She would not hear or listen to it either. They then asked the king if they might have 12 men to watch over her. She was so sad and melancholy since she had been in the mountain that they were afraid she might do something to herself. Yes, that they might have, said the king. Himself would told the watch they must look well after her and follow her wherever she went and stood. Therapy for the past, I assume. They then began to prepare for the wedding of the two eldest sisters. It should be such a wedding that never was heard or spoken of before. There was no end to the brewing and baking and the slaughtering. In the meantime, the soldier walked and strolled down in the other world. He thought it was hard that he should see neither people nor daylight anymore. But he would have to do something, he thought. And so for many days, he went about from room to room and opened all the drawers and cupboards, searched about on the shelves, and looked at all the fine things that were there. At last he came to a drawer in a table, in which there lay a golden key. He tried this key to all the locks he could find, but there was none it fitted. At last, he came to a little cupboard over the bed, and in that he found, well, it was just an old rusty whistle. I wonder if there's any sound in it, he thought, and put it to his mouth. No sooner had he whistled than he heard a whizzing and a whirring from all quarters. Such a large flock of birds swept down that they blackened all the field in which they settled. There he is, calling them in. "What does our master want today?" they asked. If he were their master, the soldier said, he would like to know if they could tell him how to get up to the earth again. No, none of them knew anything about that. "But our mother has not yet arrived," they said. "If she can't help you, no one can." So he whistled once more, and shortly heard something flapping its wings far away, something grand. And then it began to blow so hard that it twisted the grass like a great tide, and he was carried away between the houses like a wisp of hay across the courtyard. And if he had not caught hold of the fence, he would no doubt have been blown away altogether. For a big eagle, bigger than you can imagine, then swooped down in front of him. "You come rather sharply," said the soldier. "As you whistle, so I come," answered the eagle. So he asked her if she knew any means by which he could get away from the world in which they were. "You can't get away from here
"Unless you can fly," said the eagle. "But if you will slaughter 12 oxen for me, so that I can have a really good meal, I will try and help you. Have you got a knife?"
"No, but I have a sword," he said. When the eagle had swallowed the 12 oxen, she asked the soldier to kill one more for victuals on the journey.
"Every time I gave my mouth, you must be quick and fling a piece into my mouth," she said. "Else I may not be able to carry you up to earth."
He did as she asked him and hung 2 large bags of meat around her neck and seated himself among her feathers, getting a good grip of them. The eagle then began to flap her wings, and off they went through the air like the wind. It was so much as the soldier could do to hold on, and it was with the greatest difficulty he managed to throw the pieces of flesh into the eagle's mouth every time she opened it. At last, the day began to dawn, and the eagle was then almost exhausted and began flapping with her wings. But the soldier was prepared and seized the last hindquarter and flung it to her. Then she gained strength and brought him up to earth. When she had sat and rested a while at the top of a large pine tree, she set off with him again at such a pace that flashes of lightning were seen both by sea and land wherever they went. Close to the palace the soldier got off, and the eagle flew home again. But first she told him that if he at any time would want her would want her, he need only blow the whistle, and she would be there at once. That's some of that old world lack of punctuation. Close to the place, the soldier got off, and the eagle flew home again. But first she told him that if she at any time should want... Oh, I already read this, sorry. In the meantime, everything was ready at the palace, and the time approached when the captain and lieutenant were to be married with the 2 eldest princesses, who, however, were not much happier than their younger sister. Scarcely a day passed without weeping and mourning, and the nearer the wedding day approached, the more sorrowful they did become. At last the king asked what was the matter with them. He thought it was very strange that they were not merry and happy now that they were saved and had been set free and were going to be married. Well, they had to give some answer, and so the eldest sister said they never would be happy anymore unless they could get such checkers that they had played in the Blue Mountain. That, thought the king, could be easily managed. So he sent word to all the best and cleverest goldsmiths in the country that they could make these checkers for the princesses. For all they tried, there was no one who could make them. At last, all the goldsmiths had been to the palace except one, and he was an old, infirm man who had not done any work for many years except odd jobs, by which he was just able to keep himself alive. To him the soldier went and asked to be apprenticed. The old man was so glad to get him, for he had not any apprentice for many a day, that he brought out a flask from his chest and sat down to drink with the soldier. Before long, the drink got into his head, and when the soldier saw this, he persuaded him to go up to the palace and tell the king that he would undertake to make the checkers for the princesses. He was ready to do that on the spot, because he was drunk. He'd made finer and grander things in his day, he said. When the king heard there was someone outside who could make the checkers, he was not long in coming out. "Is it true what you say, that you can make the checkers as my daughters want?" he asked. "Yes, it is no lie," said the goldsmith that he would answer for. "That's well," said the king. "Here's the gold to make them with. But if you do not succeed, you will lose your life. Since you've come and offered yourself, they must be finished in 3 days." The next morning, when the goldsmith had slept off most of the effects of the drink, nursing a bit of a headache and a dry mouth, he was not so confident about the job. He wailed and wept and blew up his apprentice, who had got him into such a scrape while he was drunk. best things would be to make short work of himself at once, he said, for there could be no hope for his life. When the best and grandest goldsmiths could not make such checkers, was it likely that he could do it? Don't fret on that account, said the soldier, but let me have the gold. I'll get the checkers ready in time. But I must have a room to myself to work in, he said. This he got, and thanks, into the bargain. The time wore on, and the soldier did nothing but lounge about. And the goldsmith began to grumble again because he would not begin with the work. Don't worry yourself about it, said the soldier. There's plenty of time. If you're not satisfied with what I've promised you, you'd better make them yourself. The same thing went on both that day and the next, and when the smith heard neither hammer nor file from the soldier's room the whole of the last day, he quite just gave himself up for lost. It was now no use to think any longer about saving his life, he thought. Pardon me. But when the night came on the soldier, he opened the window, blew his whistle, and the eagle then came and asked what he wanted. Those gold checkers, which the princesses had in the Blue Mountain, said the soldier. But you'll want something to eat first, I suppose. I have 2 ox carcasses lying ready for you in the hayloft yonder. You'd better finish them, he said. When the eagle had done, she did not tarry, and long before the sun rose, she was back again with the checkers. The soldier then put them under his bed and lay down to sleep. Early next morning, the goldsmith came and knocked at his door. What are you after now again? Asked the soldier. You rush about enough in the day, goodness knows. If one cannot have peace when one is in bed, whoever would be an apprentice here, said he. Neither praying nor begging helped this time. The goldsmith must and would come in. At last he was let in. And then, you may be sure, there was soon an end to his wailing. But still more glad than the goldsmith were the princesses. When he came up to the palace with the checkers, gladdest of all was the youngest princess. Have you made them yourself? She asked. No, if I must speak the truth, it is not I, he said, but my apprentice who's made them. I should like to see that apprentice, said the princess. In fact, all 3 wanted to see him, and if he valued his life, he would have to come. Like, is there such a thing as just an invite in medieval times? Come to my birthday party, or if you value your life. Well, the soldier was not afraid, either of womenfolk or grandfolk, said the soldier. And if it could be any amusement to them to look at his rags, they should soon have that pleasure. The youngest princess recognized him at once. She pushed the soldiers aside and ran up to him and gave her hand and said, Good day, and many thanks for all you've done for us. It is he who freed us from the trolls in the mountain, she said to the king. He is the one I will have. She then pulled off his cap and showed them the ring she had tied to his hair. It soon came out how the captain and lieutenant had behaved. I wonder, this is old school, I wonder if that should be lieutenant, because it's spelled the same way. And so they had to pay the penalty of their treachery with their lives. And that was the end of their grandeur. But the soldier got the golden crown and half the kingdom, and married the youngest princess. At the wedding, they drank and feasted both well and long, for feast they all could, even if they could not find the princesses. And if they have not yet done feasting and drinking, well, they must be at it still. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's like pretty much time to go. I don't think we'll have time for Miko today. GS said, I wonder if sometimes only half the trolls' heads fell asleep while the other heads keep watch. I feel like I've seen a version of that in a tale before. I don't know if I've read the version like that on here. It's never quite explained why the multi-head thing is, other than just to be, they're monstrous. GS says, I love that picture. There were a few pictures, but I think you were talking about him with the 3 princesses, and I agree. Had lovely light. Which actually, I can just get us back to. Why not? There it is. 12 oxen, GS says. Geez. Yes, that... it's a lot of oxen. That's a, like... Back then, too, that was a lot of money. But I find it an interesting thought, because usually there isn't a lot of thought for, like, logistics and connections in fairy tales. So I found it infinitely interesting that they actually thought about, you know, the energy cost of flying a bird that large. GS also says everything is so dramatic. I wonder how it actually was back then. I suspect that a lot of, like, the proclamations were dramatic like that. Like, you serve your king or face death. But, like, the actual reach and ability to do that was probably pretty limited. And I doubt they did that with, like, other political lords and stuff around them. GS says always multiples of 3. It is always multiples of 3. And I genuinely don't know why. I mean, it could be just the influence of, like, the Trinity. Because that's such a thing in literature in general. The influence of that. But some of these stories are pretty heavily, like they track some of the stuff. It takes tropes and stuff from, like, Homeric stuff. So, like, I don't know. Why do we like 3s? Why do we think in 3s? 3 acts, 3 heads, 3 this, love triangles. Like, we really like ourselves multiples of 3s in narrative and stories. All right. Well, I know I'd said I might finish the Miko the Fox this week, but we are basically at time, and that would push us into overtime. We don't have that much left of Miko the Fox anyways. I will say the last few don't have a ton to do with Miko either, which is a strange way to end a series of stories titled Miko the Fox. Though it does give you some sense of how he goes on. But we can do that next week. So, if you are unaware, we do 3 things on this channel. This is storytelling, but we also do reading on Wednesdays and writing on Thursdays. Pretty much everything to do with stories and literature and so on. And so tomorrow, if you are following along, we're almost done it though, so you'd have a lot of catching up to do, but some people are pretty quick readers, with The Broken Places by Francis Peck. We were running a book club called Big Van Book Club, 6:30 Wednesday night. Myself and Avalon Bourne sit down and discuss a set of chapters each week until we're done the book. This is the penultimate one tomorrow, and it's definitely the most dramatic that we've had so far in terms of our readings. And Thursday is the Varietal Show, which is where we write stuff live together. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to like characterize coffee as a storybook character, if you will. It's hard to explain. It makes sense when we do it. It's fun. We all share in it. We do our own versions, or people give me suggestions and I work them in. It's just enjoying some writing as a pastime. Beyond that, thank you, GS, for keeping me company. My name has been Rory, and it will remain Rory after I click this. Don't know why I said that in the past tense. And this has been Fireside Fairytales on Varietal Literature. I'll keep the fire going. You have a good sleep.